Life began many millions of years ago in Littleton, as evidenced by these tribolite fossils that were found on Fitch Hill. However, it was trees and the logging industry that probably brought the first settlers into the Littleton area. Here is the Knapp family drawing logs out in Littleton, and here we have the log drives on the Connecticut River, and there were log drives also on the tributaries. Eventually, industry came to Littleton, in this case the grist mill. And the question is this the same grist mill we have here that's currently operating in Littleton? This is Fred Dodge's lumber operation up in Apthorpe Common. And this is the first meeting house in Littleton, 1812. All roads eventually began leading, as they are today, to Littleton and to places like Thayer's Inn, which was an old stopover tavern. And Thayer's Inn is still with us today and looks much the same as it did from the outside. Stores began to accumulate in Littleton, and industries such as this scythe factory showed up and began operation, employing many local citizens. A little story here that during the days of abolition, two people named Allen and Brown went to a Congregationalist minister and said, "Could we speak about the evils of slavery?" He promptly had them thrown in county jail, where they remained until a local citizen by the name of Carleton defended them and succeeded in getting them out of jail. And Carleton's house was located down in Apthorpe, and interestingly enough, this particular house was part of the Underground Railway that functioned through Littleton. Other churches came along. Here we have the Methodist Church, which is still on Main Street. And this was the house where the first Catholic Mass was offered on Main Street. Catholic Church here is said that the citizens brought stones in every Sunday to Mass, and then the Masons used them during the week to build the church. This is the Advent Christian Church down on Lafayette Avenue. It's changed a little bit. It's gone through several denominations. All Saints on School Street. And this is the Free Baptist Church, which is where Arrow Auto Lube is now located. Main Street was always a center of contention. The locals wanted to always repair it. The farmers couldn't see the value in it. And eventually, they used tamarack logs and actually built a wooden road, which after they dug it up, the dirt off from it, 50 years later, the tamarack was still in 100% good shape. And Main Street as it looks today. And we're still wondering about Main Street and how to fix it up. This is Ben Kilburn, his brother, Edward Kilburn. And this was their first stereoscopic factory, located on Main Street. They then moved to this new and larger facility up on Cottage Street, and it stands there today as an apartment house. This is the Littleton View Company, run by the Bellows family. And you notice the same type of architecture on the windows. Telephones came to Littleton as the town grew. This photograph of an Afro-American in the 1880 Eureka Hose Company piqued my curiosity, and so I investigated a little further.
I've just been reading about the death of Doxy Wilkins, who was the only colored citizen who lived here in Littleton. He was brought here by Colonel Farr, I think it was Colonel Farr, after the Civil War as a very young boy. He was born in slavery, came up here in, George Farr, came up here when he was 13 years old and was taken in by Dr. Bugbee. and he lived with Dr. Bugbey's family for many, many years, carried on the farm, was a member of the Eureka Hose Company, died in 1902, had a huge funeral at the Congregational Church, and the Unitarian Church Choir did the music, many, many flowers. Very special thing. He was buried at Greenwood Cemetery. He was survived by a widow and a stepdaughter.
This is the gravestone of Doxy Wilkins and his wife, located in our cemetery. The town building gives us an interesting view of early politics. The town voted $10,000 to build the town building, but when it was completed, it cost $35,000. Talk about cost overruns. And our town building is still with us today. The same thing happened here at the high school. This original high school built in 1928, I believe. They set aside $10,000 for the high school, and it cost $38,000. Talk about cost overruns. This was the first graduating class from the new building. Girls basketball team at a later date.
Back when they built the school, when the original school was built sometime in the 1800s, they used to mix everything by hand. And you can see there's old stone, remnants of brick, and this is the old foundation wall of a building probably prior to the 54 building. But they used to mix all this stuff by hand, and maybe had a steam-powered mixer here. But everybody shoveled all that in, and no reinforcing rod at all in there. So you saw all the reinforcing rod that we have in the wall that's going up outside. We've run into very little reinforcing material here. So it was a whole different brand of construction back in those days.
This was an inn called Granite, I assume located on Main Street. And this was the Great Northern Hotel, longtime landmark. And here are the Dells, which was long time owned by the Kilburn family and eventually purchased by the town. South of here was land set aside for a horse racing track. Schools were set up, the Apthorpe School, which is now part of an industrial building. There's also the Kilburn School, which is still in existence and used for other things. And the Mitchell School, which I couldn't find out where it was located. Pleasant Street, as it appeared in the old days. Pleasant Street, as it appears today. And then we have Ira Parker, industrialist, who was the founder of the Saranac Glove Company, which produced high-quality gloves for many years, right almost into the... This was the interior, and if you go down to Admax Salvage today, you'll see some of those same timbers in existence. And this building was the former home of Ira Parker. And you said Parker Mountain used to be a tourist attraction.
Oh, it was definitely a tourist attraction. It had a carriage road up to the top, and you paid to go up the road. Even if you walked up the mountain, you had to pay. And when you got up to the top of the mountain, there was a lookout which had been built at the top of a big pine tree, had been cut off and a wooden platform made, and a circular staircase around the trunk of the tree took you up to the observatory from which you could see the mountains in Vermont and Canada and lower New Hampshire.
Do you recognize this location in Littleton? Think about it. And there it is. Littleton's busy intersection. And this was the famous Chiswick Inn, located on the hill where the present swimming pool is. And there are still remnants of that inn up there, including the old swimming pool. This was the Oak Hill Inn. Notice the beautiful lawn care. This was our first railroad station. And this was the precursor to the Courier. It is a print shop. Shoes have always been an important part of Littleton's industrial history, and this was the Sears showroom located in the old Connors Hoffman building, which is now Hitcher Manufacturing, and the building is now serving Littleton again. This was Pike Abrasive Manufacturing, and located very near to this is the present-day Norton Abrasives. Does anyone remember what was manufactured in this building? The community house was donated to Littleton as a community resource, but so was the Skyline Farm on Mans Hill. Does anyone know where this is located today or if it's still standing? Villadue Bakery distributed bread throughout the area and is the present location of Ahead, their offices and housing. This was the old Worthmore feed store, which is presently being used by Trackside and is serving the same function. The old hospital, which was built at the turn of the century, once incorporated a nurses' training facility. It is presently being used for other purposes. Dan Remick was an interesting character here in Littleton. He was one of the original movers and shakers. It was Dan Remick who convinced the town they should buy Remick Park, which was called Hillside Park at the time. He even brought in a professional baseball team. The paintings that now adorn the library walls are a collection from Dan Remick that was donated to the Littleton Public Library. Dan Remick is also instrumental in bringing us a new water system, which is the present water system we use. A typhoid epidemic prompted the citizens of Littleton to determine they needed a new source of water rather than the Ammonoosuc River. And so, through the efforts of Dan Remick, the town voted to build a new water system. He went to the legislature and got a law passed that said Littleton could take its water from anywhere it found it and go across anyone's land to bring it to Littleton. And so what they did is they diverted the river, the north branch of the Gale, from passing through Franconia to passing through Bethlehem, and it became Littleton's source of water and is the source of water today. This particular move on relocating the water diverted the water from a proposed hydroelectric plant that was going to be the big attraction for the new Forest Hills Hotel that was located in Franconia. The headlines in the Courier when the Italians came to lay the new pipeline said, "Dagos arrive." Imagine that. Located on the upper heights of Mans Hill is this water input tower, this earthen dam well hidden behind the growth of trees, and this was one of Littleton's earliest sources of water. Pipes came from here down to the top of Pine Hill where it was distributed. And Bert Ingerson was the one who gave me the clue that what this was all about, and that was backed up by the town history. It's still up there, well grown in now, but still there if you can find it. But here's another explanation for that.
I found out a lot of things about Parker Mountain, but I think the one that Bob's referring to is the fact that the Mr. Parker, who owned the land, built a water line from the pond on Parker Mountain down to his Saranac glove shop. There's a lot of other information about Parker Mountain to be found at the library.
And let's see. Here is something called Riverside Park. I have no idea where this is located. The view of Riverside Park. But Littleton had its days of celebration. Here they are commemorating the new statue of the old soldier. The old soldier now resides down in the cemetery. Here was sulky racing down Main Street. And presidents arrived at Littleton. Remember which president this was? Notice his girth. And here he is speaking in front of the library, a Carnegie Library. And Eleanor Hodgson Porter, who wrote Pollyanna, visited with Littleton dignitaries. And this was the site of Miss Porter's home, and the granite wall is still original. This was Edward Hill at work in his studio, and that collection can now be found in the library. Littleton had its disasters. Here's the old opera block burning. Fires were going on, and here's the old soldier witnessing a big fire down on the Salmon. Floods came, and this was Lafayette Avenue, 1927 flood. So we had our share of disasters. This was 1938 hurricane, which in addition to wiping away a lot of trees, removed a 3-hole illuminated golf course, which was run by Jack Eames and was located in this position. The river originally went in a very narrow channel on the left side of this view. Here were a couple of old movers and shakers, Jack Eames and Harry Heel. And talk about ice and snow. Look at this scene on the old Whitefield Road. Snow again. There's a town building in its original colors. And this ice out took not only ice, but took 14 cars down the Ammonoosuc River, and they were spread from here to Lisbon. Betty Davis once came for a premiere of one of her movies. Does anyone know where this famous spot was in Littleton? That was McLeod's department store. And up at the end of Railroad Street, behind Persons Concrete, there lies a field, which could possibly have been the beginning of a great airport located here in Littleton. In the 40s, citizens got together to put an airfield here. And Doc Hill will tell us a little bit more about this story.
Well, I'm glad to see you, and you want me to spread a little bit about Lewis Airfield, and if you've got any questions to start me off, you go ahead and ask. But what I can remember, when I came home from finishing veterinary school in 1945, they were talking about making Lewis Field, and it was partly in Littleton, they called it Apthorpe, and partly in Bethlehem, and Carroll Lewis was trucking fellow, and he and some other men decided that they wanted to have some sort of a place to fly their private planes. And it started in, well, I think the date that it started was July 15th, 1945. The basic was to have fun with their planes and have flight instruction so that people that wanted to learn to fly the small planes, that's what they were working for, could do it. And then an outfit known as the New England Area Association Flyby, they had charter planes that used to take flights over the mountains the way they did from Whitefield. And soon afterwards, it became commercial. Some outfit from down country came, and they started flying from Littleton to New York City. And it got to the point where they wanted to extend it, and Carroll developed it so another 300 feet, and they had a runway that was probably around 3,300 feet long. But the difficulty that I remember being told about, people that understood it, was the coming in, the approach, and the going out. And they finally had to stop.
Perhaps in our rush into the future, there are some things that we have lost. But we have a vibrant Main Street, the pride of the community, a great tourist attraction. Businesses are keeping up with the times, modernizing. Littleton is now experiencing a phenomenal rate of growth in the commercial sector, so that historical Littleton has now become the employment shopping, economic, commercial, and educational center of northern New Hampshire.